Well, hello and welcome to my podcast, Manna at the Tap. My name is Gloria, and today is Good Friday, March the 29th, 2024. This day is considered the holiest of the 3 days in Holy Week, also known as the Triduum. Monday, Thursday is when the disciples' feet were washed. Good Friday marked the arrest and crucifixion of Jesus. And Holy or Silent Saturday is when Jesus was in the grave and we waited in anticipation of resurrection. The lectionary reading for today consists of John's chapters 18 and 19, and these chapters contain memories of a very old man who wrote the Gospel of John. In these chapters, the writer narrates the events of Jesus' arrest, his two trials, one in a religious court and the other in a Roman court, and his eventual crucifixion. It is important to note that all of these events on Good Friday took place on a single day. After the Passover dinner, Jesus prayed for his disciples and for all believers, which includes you and me. We have been included in Jesus' prayer. Jesus and his disciples then went to a garden in the Kidron Valley, which they often visited. Judas knew the garden's location, and Jesus knew that betrayal was coming from Judas. So when he arrived with a group of armed Roman soldiers, about 600 men, they asked for Jesus, and he answered, I am he. Jesus surrendered, asking them to spare his disciples because he was obeying his Father. Peter, he tried to defend Jesus, but he ended up cutting off the ear of a servant of the high priest because he had a concealed sword. Jesus told him to put your sword away. And then Jesus healed the servant's ear before being taken by the Roman soldiers to the high priest's home for his first trial. After a bold attack in the garden and surrounded by 600 Roman soldiers, Peter found himself left outside in the courtyard of the high priest's home. He could not accompany John, who was known to the high priest and was allowed in. Here, Peter denied knowing Jesus 3 times. Here we go. A servant girl questioned him if he was a disciple, and he replied, I'm not, as he tried to keep warm by the fire. Jesus was then taken to be questioned by Caiaphas, the father-in-law of Annas. Peter's second and third denial happened while he was still by the fire. When asked if he was a disciple again, he answered, I am not. Then a relative of the man whose ear he cut off heard him say he wasn't a disciple of Jesus and challenged him. I saw you in the garden. And Peter denied it again. At that moment, a rooster began to crow, and Peter remembered Jesus' words, you will deny me 3 times before the rooster crows in the morning. The trial of Jesus has now moved to Pilate and the governor's headquarters. It's early on Friday morning, and Pilate is in a difficult position. He appears more like a scared slave than a powerful representation of Rome. Pilate went out to the religious leaders and asked them what charges they were bringing against Jesus. The religious leaders told Pilate that Jesus was a criminal and was becoming very popular, and they feared he would lead an uprising against Rome. Rome, of course, would retaliate and destroy everything and everyone, including the temple. Pilate, too, is filled with fear and uncertainty in his decision making. He asked Jesus, "Are you king of the Jews?" Jesus answered Pilate. Jesus questioned Pilate's motives, asking, "Is this your idea? Or did others talk to you about me?" Pilate was caught in a quandary after Jesus gave him an answer that confused him even more. Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. My kingdom is from another place, and everyone on the side of truth listens to me." Pilate's last words to Jesus were, "What is truth?" In an attempt to appease the crowd and follow the customs of releasing one prisoner at the time of Passover, he asked if they wanted Jesus, the King of the Jews, to be released. However, the crowd shouted, "No, not him. Give us Barabbas." Jesus was then flogged, given a crown of thorns to wear, and was made to carry his cross. The chief priests and officials shouted, "Crucify, crucify." It was a sorrowful moment as Jesus suffered and died. But when viewed from God's perspective, his death was about to bring forth life. While on the cross, Jesus watched as the soldiers gambled for his clothes, which fulfilled another scripture. He also asked John to care for his mother and provide for her. Before he passed away, he asked for a drink, which again fulfilled scripture. Nicodemus, who we met in John 3, and who came to Jesus at night, questioning who he was, and he left in the dark that night with more questions than answers, has now returned to Scripture. And this time he has partnered with Joseph of Arimathea to ask Pilate for the body of Jesus. They did this so that another scripture would be fulfilled. Jesus was buried in a borrowed tomb that belonged to a rich man, as prophesied in Isaiah 53, verse 9. Nicodemus and Joseph wrapped the body of Jesus with costly spices in strips of linen. This was the Jewish burial custom. Because it was the Jewish day of preparation, and since the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there.